Hi guys. So, The Witcher Netflix finally released, and I hope you all spent your weekends watching all 8 episodes, because that is what I did. I am actually traveling right now for the holidays. I'm home in New York with my family, but I feel like I needed to record a video and talk about my thoughts on the show. I'm not able to wait until I get home to talk about things, because I feel that, you know, while the thoughts are fresh in my mind, I kind of just wanted to express everything that I feel about the show and just kind of talk about it with you guys. So for those of you who don't know, I consider myself a very big fan of the Witcher universe, and I consider myself kind of like a Witcher lore master. Yes, that is my official title. Witcher lore master. I have played the games, and I've also read almost all of the books. The only ones I have not read are Season of Storms and Lady of the Lake. So I've read The Last Wish, Sword of Destiny, Blood of Elves, Time of Contempt, Baptism of Fire. I've read the books that were the meat and potatoes of this first season of Witcher Netflix. So with all of that being said, I just wanted to make this first video that is just me talking about my first reactions and my first thoughts about the show. And then my plan is to make a few other videos about random things about the show, but I also want to do like a breakdown of each episode. So I'll probably do like one video a week, just kind of talking about each episode, and I have a few other ideas for different videos that I want to do as well. So with all of that being said, I want to just answer the main question that, you know, if you want to know, Tracy, did you like or did you dislike The Witcher Netflix Season 1? The bottom line is yes, I did like it. Weighing, like, just kind of through my first watch through and looking at the pros and the cons, I enjoyed it as a show, and I enjoyed it for all that it was, and it was a great journey going through all 8 episodes, and there were things that happened that made me just be like, yes, like, this is great. And then there were other things where I was like, this is weird, why are they doing this? But if I had to just like straight up just answer that one question, did you like the show? The answer is yes, I liked it. But I wanted to kind of talk about 2 things. The first is talking about the reactions that I've seen online so far, and then talk about, you know, just my general overview of the show. So first of all, I have not like read any online reviews from entertainment or even gaming sites, because honestly, I don't really care about the reviews from entertainment sites. From what I've heard, they're pretty terrible. But what I do care about is what fans think of the show. That's the opinions that matter to me. And I've noticed different reactions and opinions from just general people who don't know anything about The Witcher, who are just kind of watching it. I've noticed opinions from 2 people who have played the games but haven't read the books, and then 3 people who have read the books and play the games and are like me. Yeah. The people, so far from what I've seen, people who don't know much about The Witcher and people who have played the games absolutely loved the series, and they were like, this is amazing, this is the best thing ever. Again, this is a generalization, but that's what I've gotten. And then the people who have read the books and really like the lore, I've noticed a lot of people actually didn't really like the show, which I find to be interesting, and I've been trying to like wrap my head around it, because me as a book reader, I enjoyed it, and I'm like, why are all these people like saying they really hated it? Like, obviously there's a lot of things that were not true to the source material, but I don't know, I feel like we all knew this going into the show, so why is it such a surprise that a lot of the stuff is not true to the source material? For me personally, when I was going into watching the show, I had already seen a lot of promotional stuff for it. I had already watched and read many interviews from the showrunners and the actors, so I knew that there was going to be a lot of liberties taken. They were gonna basically write up Yennefer's origin story. They were gonna do a lot of different things with Ciri's story. Again, I've mentioned this in my previous videos, the only thing that we know is Geralt's story in the first 2 books. you know, Ciri and Yennefer are only in like 5 short stories in the first 2 books. They're not in a lot of the books. So I knew the showrunners were going to be making their own story here. And for the most part, I was okay with the story that they made up. There are criticisms, and I will get into that later. But a lot of book readers, from what I've seen, are all like, this is not good. I don't really like what they've done. They questioned a lot of the things, and you know, I think it really is, from my thoughts on it, it is a matter of taste and what you find pleasing in a show or in just entertainment in general. And I think some people were not fully able to separate what they know from the books to this show adaptation, and they were too engrossed in that, and they were just like, I cannot like accept this adaptation as a good adaptation. So, you know, for me, I was able to accept that, and I was able to enjoy it for the entertainment that it was, and so that's why I enjoyed it personally. But that's kind of my like little analyzation of why you know, some book readers did not like this show. But then again, the people who played the games and just know their limited knowledge of the universe based on what CD Projekt Red has created, they loved it from what I've gathered. So hey, okay. So with that point out of the way, now I'm gonna actually talk about my thoughts on the show and why I liked it and why some of the things I didn't like. I should have like outlined what I wanted to say first and maybe make it a little bit more cohesive, but I did not like write an outline or anything. So we're just gonna talk about things, okay? So first things first, like basically everybody on the internet has been saying already, the main 3 actors, you know, I'm gonna say the main 4 actors because Jaskier is included in this. The main 4 actors did a tremendous job at their roles. They all really nailed it, in my opinion. Henry Cavill, we had our doubts. Even me, when they first casted him, we were all kind of like, okay, this is interesting. And the more and more interviews we saw of Cavill being just a genuine fan of the series, I think that really helped him just nail this role. And the script writing was just really, really good for capturing who Geralt is. And a lot of people agree with that, even the major critics of the show. Yennefer, some people were a little iffy about Yen, but I thought she did great. I thought it was a great Yennefer. There are some things I think she could have, like, you know, shown the attitude of Yen a little bit more, but for what it was, I think she did great. Ciri, the Cirilla, Freya did a great job at Cirilla. She was really, like, very beautiful and just a great actress. And then Jaskier, the internet has loved Jaskier, and it makes me happy because I'm just gonna say this now, I've always been a fan of Dandelion in the games, in the books, and in the show, and a lot of people that I've talked to, like, do not like Dandelion in the games, and even in the books he can be a little annoying, but they just, the humor that he added and the little quips and things and the relationship between the two was just, oh, they nailed it. They nailed it. So, and everybody basically agrees with that. Like, the internet is all like, I love the Bard. The Bard is great. And you know what? Great. Like, Dandelion is finally getting the recognition he deserves. From purely a viewer standpoint, I feel the show really had a great atmosphere. It definitely had the dark, gritty universe that we all know very well from the Witcher series. The fight scenes, as many people are saying, the fight scenes are really, really great. They did a great job with the magic and the monsters in the world. It wasn't too cheesy or corny for this world that's also very, like, realistic and gritty. I think that they did a good job mixing both. The pacing at times was a little off, but mostly I thought it was pretty great. And the music and just, again, the overall atmosphere of the show, I think, was really, really good and did give me a sense that I was in the world of The Witcher. I will say there are some minor characters that I did not like. I did not like the way they portrayed certain minor actors. And for me, a lot of The Witcher is these minor characters that are my favorite characters. So there were a few characters that I really like in the books that they, I feel like they just didn't portray well. So I'm willing to see maybe that'll get better as, you know, more seasons come out. This is only the first season and we've only seen a little bit of some of these minor characters. And I'm gonna actually make a whole separate video on which minor characters I liked and didn't like. So that was one of my little ticks on the negative side. So as far as the stories go, the stories that were adapted into some of the episodes, I thought most of them were pretty good. And there were moments where they were directly quoting some of the book, or they were saying, paraphrasing something that was said in the books, and I remembered. It brought me to the pages of the book that I was reading in The Last Wish and Sword of Destiny, and it just reminded me of those stories, and it just made me smile, honestly. I was just so happy. I'm trying to think of a specific example. The Edge of the World, they were kind of paraphrasing, but when Geralt was talking with Filavandrel, it reminded me of when Geralt is tied up talking to Filavandrel, and they're, talking about the ethics of the elves and the questioning, their pride versus, him being human or monster and things like that. And it just reminded me of that dialogue that they had in the book, and it just made me smile, and it made me like, yes, this is great. Another example is like The Last Wish. Yennefer said something like that Geralt smelt so bad that she's like, I can literally, name your horses, their color, their type, what type of horse he had. I can't think of the quote exactly, but it's a great quote from the book, and she said it, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that. This is the kind of quirky things that Yennefer says, and they brought that into the show, and I was really, really happy with that. Despite some of these short stories being kind of like shortened versions of the stories, and they did kind of rush through a lot of things, which you have to do when you're writing a show. You cannot include all of the dialogue and all of the scenes and all of the lore within these short stories, because it would just be too much. So the fact that they, had these little things that you could remember from the books, just for me as a book reader, it made me happy inside to see those things, and I thoroughly enjoyed that. As far as Yennefer's whole origin story goes, I think that it was done pretty well. Though I think it was okay for, like, they basically, not only did they introduce Yennefer as a character with her origin story, but they also kind of introduced how magic works in this world. And it's not entirely accurate to how magic is in the actual Witcher universe. The way they showed Yennefer's transformation, I thought was really good. We don't really know about Yennefer before we meet her later on after her transformation. She brings up occasionally some of her backstory in the books, and I honestly think what the show did is okay, and I actually loved the relationship that Yennefer had with Tissaia in this season. Tissaia was never really a character I thought much about in the books, but they really took her character and made it like a crutch for Yennefer, and I found it really good. For the show, it was great. I think it had a lot of development for Yennefer, and I have no qualms with that at all. So, talking about some of my negatives here, I will say the biggest negative for me was Ciri's timeline. Just in general, actually, I just want to talk about the whole timeline thing because it was a little confusing. Most of my friends and people I've talked to have agreed that's been like the biggest complaint I've heard, is that the timeline is a little hard to follow. Other people were like, oh, what are you talking about? That was really easy. I had no issues. But honestly, it was not completely clear what time things were happening. And it was only little comments that characters made, and unless you're really, really paying attention, which, come on, not everybody is closely paying attention to every piece of dialogue in a show. Unless you're really paying attention, when Renfri brings up a comment about Queen Calanthe winning her first battle, that, that makes you realize, oh, okay, so this is taking place in the past, and Ciri's timeline is more of the present. It was a little confusing, but it's not something that was so horrible in the show that I would say is a major criticism. It was just like, okay, I would say it's not a major criticism, but I would say A lot of people would agree a second watch through definitely helps you pick up on a few of those things that you might have missed in the first watch through. Okay, so back to talking about Ciri's timeline. I like some of her timeline, but most of it just had me scratching my head, and I felt like a lot of it was very, very unnecessary. I think a lot of people would agree with me here that her just running through the forest was completely pointless, and they skipped over all the important stuff of Broccolon. And I think my number one criticism of the show is all of Broccolon, basically. And some people might not think that's the biggest deal, but to me it was a big deal. I loved the story Sword of Destiny, and that was not even really a thing in this show, and I thought it was going to be, because they show, you know, we all knew Ciri was gonna go to Broccolon, but it was pretty damn pointless in this show. Her even going there to begin with was absolutely pointless. So, spoilers to the books if you haven't read the books, but Geralt first meets Ciri in Broccolon Forest, and they did not include that in the show at all. And this meeting, I actually feel is pretty crucial to their story. It's the first time that Geralt and Ciri get to bond together, and we don't get any of that at all. And honestly, the Dryads just were not done very well in this show. I already had my criticisms when we first saw shots of them in the trailer, because not the fact that they don't, you know, in the books they're described essentially as like green tree women, and I was not expecting that. I'm okay with the design of the characters, because I feel like having the Dryads that we see, at least the way like CDPR has designed Dryads, I think that would have been a little weird and taken away from some of the realism of the show, even though there are monsters and different creatures and things like that. I didn't have a problem with the design of the Dryads. They're all using spears, and the Dryads are all rangers, hunters. They use bow and arrows, and the big thing about the Dryads is how skilled they are with bow and arrow, and none of these Dryads like were using bow and arrows. They're all holding spears, and it just didn't make sense to me. And the Dryads are very much like the elves, are very prideful people and kind of racist towards humans. They did not show that at all in this show, and once you're in Broccolon Forest, it is very difficult to get out. Usually the Dryads will use you for something, or you'll have to go through a lot of hoops with them to actually leave the forest. And Ciri, not so much Ciri, she's able to enter and leave, but they just let Mousesack walk in, stroll on in, this Doppler Mousesack, be like, hey Ciri, I'm here for you. All right, let's go, bye. And that's just not how it would be in Broccolon. I'm sorry. Humans have no place in Broccolon.
Humans have no place in Broccolon.
I was ready for a whole story of Geralt and Ciri in Broccolon, and you know, getting their first time together to bond. So with that, that was my first disappointment, and then my second disappointment was probably the last episode, the ending of Geralt and Ciri finally reuniting. I did like all of the ways that they described the Law of Surprise and how important that is to the series, because honestly it is really important. The Law of Surprise is everything. That is why they are connected. It's through this destiny that they are connected together, and I think the show did a good job explaining that, but they didn't do a good job of having them reunite, honestly. It was kind of anticlimactic. The story of Geralt invoking the Law of Surprise with that guy, and then him coming home to his wife having Ciri, is the story in Something More, but it just, I don't know, it wasn't really done well. And when in the books, when Geralt and Ciri reunite, she hugs him, and it's really emotional. I teared up a little bit in the book. Ciri says something along the lines of, you know, is it true, Geralt? Am I your destiny? And Geralt says, no, you're something more, or you're so much more. And it's like, oh my god, like the fact that he said that, and the show has multiple times taken direct quotes from the books, and I feel like this just would have been the perfect quote to include at the very end, and they didn't. Or something along the lines of what he says in the book would have just been so much more like heartfelt and just like emotional, and they just didn't do that. As I guess it didn't make sense because they didn't meet at all until that very last scene. I thought they would have met a little bit earlier, like they did in the books, but they didn't include that. But I think the journey and a lot of the stories that they actually did include in the show did enough for me to actually enjoy the whole series as a whole and make me look forward to watching season 2 when that comes out, probably in 2021. We're gonna have to wait a long time. But yeah, so those are my initial thoughts. There's a lot of other things I could probably talk about, and we could make this video like an hour long, but I think those are the main things that I just wanted to address in this video. Like I said, I will be creating more Witcher Netflix content in the coming weeks, and I hope you guys, you know, tune in and have discussion with me, because I do enjoy discussion. And more than anything, I'm actually really happy that this show has brought so much discussion about The Witcher among, you know, people on the internet, among friends, among my family. my family is watching The Witcher, so it brings me a lot of happiness that one of my favorite universes, fantasy universes, is being talked about so much right now, and mostly talked about well. I saw that a lot of people are picking up The Witcher 3 and playing it on Steam, and that's awesome, and I'm so happy that this has brought so much discussion and passion for this world that I love so much. Whew, okay, so that was a lot of talking. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Let me know your reactions as well. I am gonna definitely watch through the show again, and we will do a breakdown of all of the episodes. Thank you again, everybody, for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Bye bye!